"We're celebrating your brother," my dad said when I invited them to my graduation dinner. Hours later, my aunt posted, "Toast to the real winner. He bought a motorcycle." I paid the $2,110 bill, canceled the loan I'd covered 4 years, and left a note. Let him handle it. By sunrise, 76 missed calls. I'm Jack, 23, and last month I walked across that stage in my cap and gown with a smile stuck on my face while my chest felt like it was breaking. Graduation was supposed to be one of those rare moments when a family drops everything, shows up, and just celebrates together, something you only get once. But for me, it just reminded me where I sat in the family pecking order. Always second. Always the dependable one who kept things quiet behind the scenes so my younger brother, Ethan, could hog the spotlight for doing almost nothing. To get why it cuts so deep, you need to understand how we were raised. Ethan was the golden kid, the one who got the loudest cheers at soccer games, even if he spent most of the match warming the bench. If he brought home a C, Mom would go, "At least he tried." And that's what counts. When I came home with straight A's, Dad would glance at my papers, nod, and then ask if I'd mowed the lawn yet. It was a steady pattern. My wins barely registered while Ethan's smallest efforts were treated like heroic feats. I lost count of family dinners where I was wiping plates in the kitchen while my brother soaked up praise at the table. Still, I kept my composure. I worked, I studied. I didn't make a scene because a part of me believed maybe one day they'd notice. Maybe when I hit a real milestone, graduating college, first in the family, no less, they'd finally look at me with pride. Call it naivete, but hope hangs on even when it has no reason to. So when graduation neared, I called home excitedly, told them the date, explained the ceremony, and asked if they'd come. Mom made that non-committal noise she always does when she's pretending to care. Dad cut in with his usual bluntness. "Jack, we're busy celebrating your brother," he said, as if that were the most obvious thing in the world. I remember squeezing the phone until my knuckles ached and asking, "Celebrating what?" "He bought a motorcycle," Dad said, almost proud, like a motorcycle could compete with a college degree. I tried to laugh it off, but inside I felt like I'd been handed the quiet truth I'd suspected for years. Nothing I did would ever be enough. I went to graduation alone. My roommate, Mike, came and clapped for me, which mattered more than he probably realized. And he even took a picture of me holding my diploma. That's the only photo I have from that day. That evening, after I'd set up a small dinner I thought my family might attend, I scrolled my phone and found a Facebook post from my aunt, Ethan grinning, an arm around Dad, a beer in hand, captioned, "Family toast for the real winner." My stomach dropped. The real winner. That stung worse than anything. My degree, all the late nights, skipped parties, ramen dinners to save cash. It was invisible next to the chrome on a new bike. I paid the bill for the untouched graduation dinner anyway, $2, 110, and it wasn't just for the food. It was the sum of all the little ways I'd been financially propping up the household. What they never admitted aloud was that I'd been quietly paying down a business loan for years. Dad's Pride and Joy business had taken out money they couldn't manage, and I had stepped in to cover monthly payments without complaint, because, well, that's what family does, Mom would say. I told myself I was doing it for stability, for peace, hoping one day they'd see I was the one holding things together. But sitting alone in that restaurant while strangers toasted felt like the last straw. The bitterness I'd swallowed turned into a cold, clear realization. I'd been holding up a foundation for a house I wasn't welcome in. That night, I decided I wasn't carrying it any longer. Back home, I opened my laptop, pulled up the loan account, and saw my name tied to the payments. My money had been propping everything up. After years of sacrifice while Ethan coasted and my parents applauded, I hit the stop button. The responsibility slid off my shoulders like a weight. Before I left the house the next morning, I printed the confirmation page, folded it neatly, and left it on Dad's desk with a note. Let him handle it. My hand didn't tremble when I wrote it. For the first time in a long while, I felt calm. By sunrise, my phone blew up, 76 missed calls. Mom, Dad, Ethan, all buzzing like they'd just woken up from a dream and realized what life felt like without me softening every fall. That's when things began to unravel. At first, I ignored the calls. Easy to do. Silence the phone, tuck it under the pillow, lie on my back and stare at the ceiling, breathing in that weird mix of guilt and relief. By mid-morning, I finally checked it, and there it was, 76 missed calls. 76. From the people who couldn't be bothered to drive 20 minutes to sit at my graduation table. The irony wasn't lost on me. The voicemails told the rest. Mom's voice, trembling with the practiced panic she pulls out when she wants something. Jack, honey, you can't just do this. This is serious. Your father's business depends on you keeping those payments going. Call us back. The next one was sharper. Jack, stop being childish. This isn't the time for drama. We'll talk later. By the fifth message, she dropped the honey, and it was just, Jack, pick up. Right now? Dad's messages were short and cutting. What do you think you're doing? Don't mess with things you don't understand. And one of those lines played over and over in my head. You're sabotaging your own family. That's what Dad said. But Ethan's words were the ones that really cut. He actually laughed into the phone, like it was a big joke. Man, you're overreacting, he told me. It's just money. You'll keep paying, don't stress. You've always been the responsible one. Like that was my entire purpose in life, to haul everyone else's load while he zipped around on his shiny motorcycle, grinning for family photos. That night, I went to bed with my phone on silent, but sleep didn't come. Every voicemail replayed in my head, not just the words but the tone, that entitled expectation that I'd cave like always. Because for years I had, saying yes, swallowing pride, fading into the background. But now that I'd said no, suddenly I was the selfish one, the dramatic one, the problem. The next morning, I realized the calls weren't going to stop. They were upping the pressure. My aunt, the same one who'd posted that toast for the real winner, tagged me in another Facebook post. A photo of Ethan straddling his bike in the driveway, smiling like a kid on Christmas. The caption read, "So proud of this young man. Responsible, hardworking, always taking care of family. He deserves the world." Responsible, hardworking, always taking care of family. My chest hurt reading that. Those were my words. I was the one who'd juggled 2 jobs to cover loan payments. The one who'd skipped vacations, skipped nights out, sacrificed every ounce of breathing room so they wouldn't lose the house. And there she was, handing my story to Ethan like it was his prize. The comments rolled in. He's such a good son. What a man, already stepping up. Your parents must be proud. I slammed my laptop shut so hard the table rattled. By then the calls had become texts, Mom flooding my screen. You don't understand the trouble you're causing. This will ruin us if you don't fix it. Ethan can't help. He's just starting out. You're the one with stability. That word again, stability. It was never about me, never about my graduation, never about the years I clawed my way through school. I was just their safety net. The steady one. The background character who kept smiling while everyone else got credit. I tried distracting myself, but the silence in my apartment was louder than their voices. Little memories kept bubbling up. Christmas mornings when Ethan unwrapped the newest gadgets while I got socks. Birthdays when his cake was custom-made and mine came off the clearance rack. The time he got caught drinking and Dad brushed it off as boys being boys, while I came home 5 minutes past curfew and got grounded for a month. All those tiny cuts seemed to open up at once. 3 days passed before I answered one of their calls. It was Mom. Her voice was sugary sweet, the way it gets right before she corners me. Jack, honey, we just need to talk. We know you're upset about graduation. We're sorry we couldn't be there, but you understand. It was a big day for your brother too. I almost laughed. A big day? Buying a motorcycle? My chest tightened, but I kept quiet. She went on. This isn't the time for rash decisions. The business loan isn't just about your father, it's about all of us. If you stop paying, we could lose everything. Do you want your family to be homeless? There it was, the manipulation. Not a word of thanks for 4 years of payments. Not a shred of pride for my degree. Just straight to guilt. Straight to the big, dramatic, we'll be homeless line. And in that moment, I knew nothing I said would ever matter. If I gave in, I'd be trapped again. If I refused, I'd be the villain. No winning, not by their rules. That night, I pulled out a stack of old bank statements I'd saved. Years of proof showing I'd been the one holding everything together while they clapped for Ethan. I didn't know what my next move was, but I knew this. I wasn't going back to being their safety net. Not again. And that decision lit the spark for what came next. I wish I could tell you that after a few quiet days they cooled off, maybe even realized how unfair they'd been. But that's not how my family works. When guilt doesn't get me, they escalate. Twist the story, pile on pressure, make me the unreasonable one until I crack. For days after I stopped the payments, the betrayal hit like a punch. I was at work in a training session when my phone buzzed. A text from Mike, my roommate. Bro, are you seeing this? Check Facebook. Now, I slid my phone under the table, opened the app, and my stomach dropped. There it was, a long post on Mom's profile, dripping with that self-pitying drama she uses when she wants to play the victim. My heart is breaking tonight, it began. After all the sacrifices we've made for our oldest son, he's turned his back on us. We supported him through school, paid his bills, gave him everything, and now, when we need him most, he's abandoned us. Please pray for us in this difficult time. I couldn't breathe. My pulse hammered as I scrolled through comments. Neighbors, relatives, church friends, folks I'd known forever, piling on sympathy. I can't believe Jack would do this. How selfish. Don't worry, God will provide. And the worst one, at least you have Ethan. He's such a good son. And of course, Ethan had left his own comment. Don't worry, Mom. I'll always be here for you guys, I said, meaning it, and then tried to act like I trusted those words back. Count on me. Count on him. For what? Ethan hadn't put a single cent toward that loan. He hadn't lifted a finger to keep their business afloat. And yet there he was soaking up praise for empty promises while I got crucified online. By lunchtime, my phone was a nonstop buzz. Cousins I hadn't heard from in years messaged me things like, "Why are you doing this to your parents?" One even wrote, "You know Ethan can't handle this stuff. Why would you dump it on him?" Dump it on him? That loan had been dumped on me for 4 years. When I walked in that evening, Mike was on the couch with his arms crossed, a printed screenshot of the post sitting on the coffee table like evidence. "You okay, man?" He asked, quiet. "They're throwing you under the bus hard," he said. I just nodded because I was too angry to answer. It wasn't only that they lied. It was that they rewrote everything. Suddenly, I was the ungrateful son they'd sacrificed for. Erased were the months I drained my savings to cover payments. Erased was my graduation, my achievements, my sacrifices, all laid out publicly for everyone to see. Later that night, the call started again, only this time I picked up. It was Dad, his voice cold and nearly rehearsed. "So this is how it's going to be? You think you can just walk away after everything we've done for you?" I snapped back. "Everything you've done for me? I've been paying your business loan for 4 years with my own money. You never said thank you. And then you go online and tell everyone you paid for my life." He didn't even flinch. "Watch your tone. Jack," he said. "You wouldn't have gotten through school without us. You're alive because of us." That line, "You're alive because of us," was the same manipulative card they'd always played to make me feel indebted forever. This time something inside me didn't buckle. Guilt didn't follow. Only a betrayal that felt like acid. As if things couldn't get worse. The next morning my boss called me into her office and slid her phone across the desk. Awkward. "Jack," she said softly, "I don't know what's going on with your family, but your mom called here this morning. She said you've been acting unstable, making reckless choices, and asked me to keep an eye on you." I froze. My mother had called my workplace to smear me, to label me unreliable, so the pressure would follow me into the one place I still owned. My job, my independence, my escape. I apologized and promised everything was fine, hands shaking the whole day. That wasn't just manipulation, it was sabotage, my own mother trying to ruin the last thing that belonged to me. I sat in the dark that night and felt it clearly. There was no going back. They hadn't only ignored graduation or taken me for granted. They'd turned me into the villain and then tried to crush me publicly, privately, professionally. For the first time, I didn't just hurt. I felt dangerous, and some crooked idea of revenge started to form. The days after Mom's call were the worst. I replayed her voice in my head, that practiced blend of concern and superiority, imagining her leaning into the phone and saying the exact things my boss repeated. She knew what she was doing, weakening me, making sure I had nowhere to stand except under her thumb. The fallout was quick. My boss, though she didn't fully buy it, looked at me differently all week. Every time I walked in, I felt her doubt like a weight. Coworkers whispered, not because they knew the truth, but because tension clung to me like a storm cloud. The seed had been planted, and my own mother had planted it. At home, the silence grew unbearable. My phone lit up constantly with calls, texts, voicemails, and family group chats I refused to open. Even Grandma, usually fair, sent a short message, "Call your mother. She's worried sick." I wanted to scream. She wasn't worried. She was cornered. How do you explain that to people who've only ever heard one side? By the end of that week, I stopped leaving the apartment. Mike would knock and check on me, and I'd grunt something through the door. Food tasted flat. Music was noise. The degree I'd fought so hard for felt small compared to the weight of what they'd done. One night, I spread the bank statements on my desk again. Line after line of payments month after month for 4 years. Rent money, grocery money, savings, all funneled into a loan that wasn't mine. I traced the numbers until my eyes swam. That was my 20s, my youth, my chance to actually be young. Wasted because I convinced myself I was keeping a family together. And for what? Alone, humiliated, branded as selfish. The bitterness started to shift into something colder. A plan, not fully formed but growing. If they could lie about me in public, maybe the truth needed to speak just as loud. If they could erase my sacrifices, maybe I could make them impossible to ignore. But I had to sit with the pain a while longer before I moved. 2 weeks passed, and the messages didn't ease up. They got meaner. Mom wrote, "You've always been dramatic, Jack." They said things like, "We thought college would mature you, but clearly it hasn't." Dad's message read, "When this all comes crashing down, don't come crawling back." And Ethan's text was the one that burned the most. "Bro, just turn the payments back on. You know you'll end up doing it anyway." He wrote it like my role as the family's financial safety net wasn't even up for debate, like it was just inevitable. Meanwhile, their Facebook parade kept rolling. Another picture of Ethan, this time standing beside Dad in the garage, captioned, "A real man steps up when times are tough. So proud of our son." The comments poured in again, praising him like he was Atlas carrying the world. I nearly hurled my phone across the room. After that, I stopped checking Facebook altogether. Watching my own story get rewritten in real time wasn't worth the rage. Still, even as I pulled away from their noise, I knew I had to act. I couldn't let this define me. Me in the shadows, them in the spotlight, my sacrifices replaced by their fiction. One late night, I sat at the kitchen table with Mike, who was munching cereal out of the box and studying me. "So what now?" he asked. I shrugged, pretending I didn't know. "Yeah, you do," he said softly. "You're just not saying it yet." He was right. Deep down I knew exactly what had to happen, but speaking it would make it real. So I whispered instead, "I can't keep being their safety net. Not anymore. If they want to keep lying, then they can live with the truth when it catches up." Mike leaned back, nodded slow, and let the silence speak for him. And for the first time in weeks, I slept straight through the night. Not peacefully, not without dreams, but with a strange calm that comes when you finally accept the old chapter is closed, even if the new one hasn't started. That calm, that tiny seed of resolve, was the beginning of everything that followed. Funny thing, once you accept a door is shut, you start seeing others cracked open. Those first few weeks after I cut off the loan payments were suffocating, but when I finally stopped dragging around their guilt, something shifted. For the first time in years, I had extra cash sitting in my account at the end of the month. It wasn't a fortune, but seeing numbers that weren't immediately sucked away by someone else's debt felt like gulping air after being held underwater. The timing couldn't have been better. My degree in finance started paying off, literally. A professor I'd stayed close with connected me to a mid-sized firm downtown. After a couple interviews, I landed an entry-level analyst role. The salary wasn't sky-high, but it was mine, untethered, no family strings attached. Depositing that first paycheck felt more valuable than any money I'd ever made hustling side jobs through college, because for once I didn't owe it to anyone. Meanwhile, Mike became my biggest cheerleader. He'd clap me on the shoulder when I dragged home late, muttering, "One step at a time, man." Sometimes he shoved a bowl of ramen into my hands with a grin, "Eat now, scheme later." Small gestures, but after years of carrying everything alone, they felt huge. Slowly, I started rebuilding. I put money toward my student loans, which I'd barely touched while covering my parents' business debt. I bought a secondhand laptop that didn't freeze every 10 minutes like the relic I'd used since high school. I even let myself go out with coworkers a few times, sitting in bars I used to avoid because spending $10 on a drink once felt impossible. Each small step forward reminded me how much I'd given up. I thought about all those nights I skipped hanging out just to stash cash for loan payments. The summers the first worked double shifts while classmates interned or traveled. Turns out it wasn't that I couldn't afford to live a little. I just wasn't allowed to, because I was busy propping up a family that would never admit it. The best part? Word began spreading through extended family about my job. My cousin Jenna, one of the few who ever believed me, sent a DM, "Congrats on the new role. That's amazing." Slowly, relatives outside my immediate circle started seeing me as more than the villain my parents painted online. Of course, Mom and Dad didn't view it that way. When they eventually caught wind of my job, Mom left a voicemail dripping with sarcasm. "Oh, so now you can help again. Good. We'll talk soon about the loan." The arrogance of it almost made me laugh. After everything, the lies, the public smear, the sabotage, they still thought I'd come crawling back as soon as I had steady income. I didn't return the call. Instead, I began preparing. One evening, I pulled out the box from under my bed where I'd been stacking proof for years. Bank statements, email confirmations, screenshots of every payment. A neat archive of evidence showing it was me, not Ethan, not Mom, not Dad, who'd been carrying the loan all along. Staring at the pile, I realized I finally had power. They had stories, lies, a polished image. But I had receipts. Literal receipts. The more I built my own life, the more fragile theirs looked. Their business was crumbling without me. Rumors swirled about Dad missing payments. One of their suppliers even called me directly, assuming I was still handling things, asking about late invoices. I told him politely but firmly that I wasn't involved anymore. He sighed and said, "Figures. You were the only one who ever answered emails on time." That stuck with me. People were noticing. The cracks were spreading. At the same time, I started growing socially in ways I hadn't before. At work, I impressed a senior partner by staying late to fix a messy spreadsheet before a client presentation. A partner at the firm told me I had a good head for strategy, and hearing that from someone outside my family, someone who didn't already see me as dramatic, immature, or selfish, felt like fuel to a sputtering engine. It was the kind of recognition that lit something inside me and made me want to move. I didn't broadcast any of it to Mom and Dad. I kept quiet and let them keep picturing me as dependent and floundering while I quietly stacked small wins. Every step forward, every tiny victory at work, every extra dollar I didn't hand over was building into a reserve I knew would matter one day. One night, sitting at my kitchen table flipping through the stack of bank statements I'd saved, a thought sharpened in my head. They'd spent years erasing me from the story, but what happens when the erased person starts writing his own version? I smiled to myself, slid the papers back into the box under my bed, and thought, they won't see this coming. The first real crack in their armor didn't come from me at all, but by accident. I was at the office on a Friday evening wrapping up a report when I overheard two partners in the hallway mention my father's company by name. My ears went up. Apparently, they'd been pitched months before and turned it down because the books were a mess. Expenses hidden, debts shuffled, payments delayed. Hearing professionals talk about the company as a sinking ship made my stomach drop. That night, I pulled the old loan documents back out and read the fine print with new eyes. I'd always focused on the payments, where the money left my account, but this time I noticed the legal language I'd skimmed over at 19. My signature made me a guarantor. I wasn't just a helpful son covering bills. I'd been legally tied to their mess. Dad had handed papers to me on a weekend visit with a casual, "Sign here, so we can keep things running," and 19-year-old me, desperate for approval, signed without reading every clause. That mistake cost me years. Now I was older, and I saw it for what it was. Exploitation dressed up as family expectation. Quietly, I started steering conversations at work toward guarantor liability and small business exposure without mentioning my situation. One of the senior associates, Lisa, listened and said, "When people misuse guarantors, it often comes back to bite them. Courts don't like manipulation, especially when there's documentation." Documentation. That word rang in my head as I pictured my neat stack of statements. Online, my family's tone shifted, too. The triumphant posts about Ethan's bike and the real winner, captions faded into vague quotes about hardship and faith being tested, and my aunt even posted a plea for donations to keep the business afloat. The same people who'd called me selfish now asking strangers for help. Then came Ethan's message. "Yo, Dad says the bank's on our case. Just turn the payments back on for a while until things settle, okay? Be a team player." Team player. Like I was a cog in their machine, expected to keep spinning until it broke me. I stared at that line a long time and replied simply, "I'm not on your team anymore." No reply came, and silence felt like panic on their side. Meanwhile, at work, I landed a project analyzing distressed businesses. The irony wasn't lost on me. The deeper I dug, the clearer it became. My father's company wasn't just struggling, it was collapsing, and without me it was only weeks from default. That knowledge gave me a strange, cold power. I had been the invisible backbone for years, and now that I'd stepped away, they were wobbling on their own. One night, Mike found me at the table surrounded by highlighted pages and scattered notes. "You're plotting," he said flat. "Preparing," I corrected, tapping the stack of bank statements. "For what?" he asked. "For the day they try to drag me back down with them," I said. "Because they will, and when they do, I won't be the quiet son who just takes it anymore. I'll have everything I need." Mike grinned and said, "Good. About time." What began as preparation became methodical strategy. Every email, every bank transfer record, every signed loan document, and every boastful Facebook post went into dated folders. I backed it all up to an external drive and started drafting a timeline from the first time Dad shoved paperwork at me to the night I cut the payments. Piece by piece, I built not just a defense, but real leverage, and the best part was they had no idea. At home, I was still the weak link, the sulking kid, too immature to face reality. They thought the upper hand was theirs. But for the first time, I knew something they didn't. The higher their lies climbed, the harder they'd fall when the truth landed, and I planned to be the one to strike that match. The day I started to act wasn't loud or cinematic. There was no dinner confrontation, no screaming. It began quietly, with a letter. I spent weeks assembling everything: bank statements, signed loan papers, screenshots of texts, copies of their Facebook bragging while I quietly paid the bills, and organized it into a neat, heavy binder that finally felt like the true record of what had happened. Each section tabbed, every page dated. If you flipped through that binder, the story was undeniable. A 19-year-old tricked into signing papers, a young man who spent years of his life covering a debt that wasn't his, and a family who turned that sacrifice into their own lie. Then I walked into the bank. The loan officer recognized my father's name the second I said it, and his face went tight when I set the binder on his desk. "I think you should look at this," I told him, keeping my voice calm. He thumbed through the pages: payments, transfers, signed documents, and his brow got darker with each line. After a long minute, he leaned back, exhaled, and asked, "You've been the one making these payments?" "For 4 years," I said. "Not my father, not my brother, just me." He shut the binder slowly and said, "Mr. Carter, this changes things." That was the moment the tide turned. By laying everything out, I showed I wasn't some unreliable guarantor who'd simply walked away. I was the person who'd been manipulated, and the bank, realizing they'd been misled, couldn't keep pretending otherwise. Within a week, my parents got the first notice demanding payment in full. Without my money, they were already behind, and the bank had stripped away the usual excuses. My father called that night, voice raw with anger. "What did you do?" He barked. I told the truth. I said, "You ruined us." "No, Dad," I said, "you ruined yourselves." I just stopped cleaning up the mess. The silence on the other end was a kind of proof. But I didn't stop there. I reached out to Grandma, the one elder I still trusted, and asked if she wanted to see something important. She came over with a thermos of tea and sat at my kitchen table while I opened the binder and let her read. Her hands shook. "They told everyone you abandoned them," she whispered, eyes wide. I nodded. "I know." By the time she left, she promised she wouldn't take their side anymore. And in families, word travels fast when the matriarch shifts loyalties. Cousins who'd texted accusations started sending apologies. One flat-out messaged, "I had no idea. They made it sound so different." My parents doubled down online with vague posts about betrayal and ungrateful children, but the comments didn't bend the way they'd expected. People started asking questions. Didn't Ryan, Jack, pay their loan for years? One neighbor wrote, "I remember him working 2 jobs." For the first time, their story began cracking in public. Ethan called too, his cocky tones suddenly thin. "Bro, you're making it worse," he said. "Just flip the payments back on for a bit until things settle. You know I can't deal with this stuff." I almost laughed aloud. "That's the point, Ethan. I know you can't. And now you will have to." I hung up. The most satisfying moment came a few weeks later when Dad showed up at my office. He tried to look composed in a suit that didn't hide the sweat on his temples, pulled me aside in the lobby and hissed, "You think you won? You've embarrassed us. You've destroyed the family. I looked him dead in the eye, and for the first time didn't flinch. No, I said. I freed myself from it. He had nothing to throw back. He just stood there breathing hard until finally he walked away into the cold evening. Watching him go, I realized the point of it all wasn't humiliation. It was reclaiming my life. They had built their comfort on my silence, and I took that silence away. That strike was the thing they never saw coming. Still, I knew fallout would follow. Their business unraveled faster than I expected. Within a month, the bank seized control. The loan I'd been propping up had gone into default without my payments, and the little storefront that had once been Dad's pride was shuttered, a for lease sign stapled in the window. Neighbors whispered, customers drifted off, and the business that had been the family's identity disappeared. At first, Mom and Dad tried to spin it. Posts about an unforgiving economy, about sacrifices nobody understood, but the comments no longer sang their praise. People had heard my side from Grandma and others, and the tone shifted. Didn't Jack pay your loan for years? Why wasn't Ethan stepping up? The once tight shield they'd worn in public was dented. Ethan tried to play victim too. Sold the motorcycle that used to be his trophy, claiming it was a mature move for the family's good. But without the constant praise, he looked the way he'd always been, entitled and unprepared. My life moved on. Work blossomed into a promotion quicker than I ever expected, largely because of the distressed business project I'd been on. The scars from my own years of cleaning up financial messes had made me sharp, stubborn, and relentless at spotting manipulation. My bosses noticed. By year's end, I wasn't just stable, I was ahead. The last time I saw my parents in person was at Jenna's wedding. They approached me cautiously, voices low and polite the way people get when options are gone. Mom's smile was tight, her eyes scanning my face for weakness. Jack, she said softly, maybe it's time to forgive and move on. I looked at her long, felt the weight of years pressed down, and shook my head. I did move on, I told her, but you weren't invited. Her face crumpled like something finally breaking, and for a second I watched the reality land. They no longer had power over me, no guilt to pull, no lies to twist. I turned away to the music and chatter of the reception, the laughter, the clinking glasses, and felt it like the sound of a life I'd finally claimed. Revenge, I learned, wasn't the binder or the bank seizure or even the collapse of their public story. The real revenge was standing tall while they scrambled inside the ruins of a life built on my back. I left the hall with my chin up and the air suddenly lighter. As I stepped into the cool night, I whispered, let him handle it. This time when I said it, I knew they finally understood exactly what that meant.